Every part of me is a vague nostalgia, neither for the past nor for the future. The whole of me is a nostalgia for the anonymous, prolix, unfathomable present. Fernando Pessoa. At the beginning of high school, we were expected to write an essay about human nature in my philosophy class. There were no specific requirements. We had to write about our own perspective on the topic. I happened to write that our nature comes down to a few terms that share a similar root: curiosity, greed, desire, boredom, essentially wanting something one does not have or wanting more of something one has. Obviously, human nature is a huge topic. It's oversaturated, complicated, and I don't think we'll ever get a definite answer. It also takes into account questions such as, who do we count as human? What do we count as nature? And many others. In this video, I'd like to come back to some of the points I raised in my essay and possibly, hopefully, expand on them. First of all, I think a very important point is we're not alive if we don't want anything. Even in movies or books, once the character gets what they want, the story is over. Fulfillment equals end, in most cases. And what comes after the end? A graveyard of names on the screen along with a song in the background. Or closing a book and seeing nothing but a description on the back cover. I honestly don't know why I keep reading articles on how to write a novel, because every single time, the first piece of advice is, your character must want something. Whether it's our lives or the lives of other people, we are drawn to want, to lack, to filling a void. Not having filled it, but the process of filling it, or finding something that will fill it eventually. Such a desire narrative has a pretty basic structure a lot of the time. You want something for some reason, you go through numerous obstacles and then you reach it. Or not, but more often than not you reach it. And that common narrative implies that want is something we should strive for. There is a difference between what we want and what we need, and maybe it's time to acknowledge that those two often require different ends. Maybe we're only ever meant to be fulfilled by needs and not by wants. Maybe needs exist to make us fulfilled, whereas wants exist to keep us alive and moving. Sometimes needs and wants align, but once the need is fulfilled, the want often remains, and mutates even. That brings out another point about desire. Once you get something you wanted, it's often disappointing, and it brings disillusionment along with it. No matter how happy we are with something we got or achieved, I don't think there's ever a time or a person who doesn't feel the tiniest bit of lack, of emptiness, once they got it. Maybe not at first, but once you go on with life and start existing with that seemingly fulfilled desire, you realize it will never be perfect. It will never be 100% enough. Desire is too wild to be contained. It's always on the move, and it cannot be fulfilled. So what happens if we just accept that? Is it possible to understand this inherent paradox and to be at peace with it without trying to cheat it or find loopholes around it? I'm not really sure. I think it's a natural thing about us human beings to discover how to find new directions, new solutions, new loopholes. And maybe that has to be okay. As long as we realize we'll never be fully content or at peace at all times, maybe then we can stop forcing it upon ourselves. Maybe then we can let it come naturally, even if it's never stable. Of course, I do think those moments of complete clarity exist, but they are just that, moments. Some people swear by meditation, and I tried it on and off. I'm not sure if the traditional meditation is for me, or at least doing it every day may not be for me. Though I do practice, if you can call it a practice, thought and reflection and contemplation every day. All the time, even if I don't want to. Even reading is a moving meditation for me. But still, meditation is often considered to be a detachment from one's self, one's needs, one's worries, a nirvana of sorts. And that meditative state where you desire nothing may be possible to reach. Not forever, but for these moments. Now, I'm wondering, if we consider desire to be the driving force of human life, can the meditative state be considered a little death? In a figurative way, at least? That brings me to another inverse of desire, possibly the only one, since even meditation requires a desire not to desire, which is sleep. Because sleep is surrender, whereas desire never lets you fully surrender. It doesn't let you take a rest from wanting, and even if that want is almost invisible and pure, like in meditation, for example. But we do sleep for a third of our lives, and maybe that's what gives us the balance. What about greed? It's also something I mentioned in my philosophy essay, and I do think greed is a sort of extension of desire, longing, want. Greed, from its very foundation, assumes, even if only subconsciously, that nothing will be enough, that you will keep reaching for that thing constantly, whatever the cost. I think one of the differences here is that greed sees no definite end. All the other terms have a more or less concrete end, even if it is misleading and cannot in reality be fulfilled. Greed's end seems so large, it cannot be contained. It becomes embedded in the fabric of the mean, the journey, the after end. It overshadows everything. That's why I'm not sure if it can or should be considered alongside all of the other words. If it is something that can destroy you, or the people around you, or both, I don't think it's something we should accept as normal. And what about boredom? I also mentioned it in my essay, and it may seem contradictory, especially to curiosity, for example, but I don't think they're that different. While curiosity includes a desire to learn, to discover, boredom often seems like a lack of desire. But people actually often do things out of boredom. Boredom results in action a lot of the time. Only in curiosity, it is positive, whereas boredom makes you act out of a negativized desire. When you want to stop feeling a certain way, you want to stop this lethargy, this inertia, which means you still have a desire for something. You want to want something. Because that's one of the most frustrating things about boredom, because you actually want to do things, but something is stopping you. Despite reflecting on all those terms, there's still something missing here. Some fundamental truth and underlying condition we're all afraid to face, because it doesn't sound as appealing or active as curiosity, desire, even greed. And then I discovered the term saudade. I'm about to use this word many times, so I'm very sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Which is a basically untranslatable Portuguese term. I may not be knowledgeable enough about Portuguese culture and art and literature, so I probably have tons of gaps in my knowledge about the origin and history and intricacies of the term. But as I understand it, if we put it out of any context and try to make it universal, it concerns a longing for something that we deep down know does not exist. The closest description of it in English might be melancholia or bittersweetness. It's still not a perfect description of it. It's about using a happy memory of something which amplifies the lack of prospect of it in the future. But here's the catch. If saudade is so focused on the memory of something or someone we once grasped, it is, to an extent, unrealistic. Memories are only a representation of what happened. They are not fully reliable. They are always filtered through, well, I'd say saudade. Memories are created also by our imagination, which means that those things we long for, that we think are pure memories, may not exist outside our imagination, because we have a memory, which is a mixture of what really happened and a narrativization of it. And I think that, as morbid as it may sound, saudade is the universal human condition, something we seem to cover up by manageable and quantifiable human desires, by believing we can get the things we want, by believing we understand the things we want. We categorize our wants and needs, we contemplate on our longings, and there is always a tinge of emptiness on their edges, a shadowy coloring of saudade. This sentiment may just be the most natural thing in the world. It doesn't always come out to the surface, and it's not always beneficial to us, but it's inescapable. It springs upon us for a split second until we hide it from view again. This idea kind of makes me think of its link to loneliness. I personally consider loneliness as a specific type of lack plus a specific type of longing. That's rather vague, I know, but let's leave it at that for now. And if loneliness is a lack plus longing, and if saudade is a longing that realizes itself through its inevitable lack, then can it somehow explain loneliness more? Does it have its root in loneliness, or does loneliness have its root in it? I guess that might be another discussion for another day, since adding loneliness to the mix may confuse it even more. If you have any thoughts on this, let me know in the comments, and if you want me to talk about it some more in another video. My mom always used to say, we live for our memories and our dreams. And to be honest, I always hated when she said that. For many years, I've been constantly haunted by my past, and I've been living for an idealistic and unrealistic future. So no, at some point, I made a decision. I do not want to live for my memories or my dreams. I want to finally be able to live in the present, to appreciate the present, as it is, whether or not I manage to ever reach my desires and my longings and dreams. But, of course, my mom had a point. We do live for desires we may never reach, and they often turn stronger through our distorted memory. We may be always moving backward and forward and in circles by saudade. I had a thought the other day, another unnameable sensation or realization. It was almost the end of the day, and I just felt so, I guess it might be called the opposite of saudade. It was knowing that I didn't want anything, but I couldn't specify what that nothing was. And I realized that the only thing I didn't long for, I didn't desire, was myself. That filled me with so much relief. I, like many people, often desire to be someone else, to fix myself in some way, which means I don't fully desire the self I already have. And that, though it may seem daunting, it also somehow makes my relationship to myself more unconditional and fuller. It doesn't rely on a longing or lack. It relies on this strange, unnameable, though also bittersweet, opposite of saudade. And it makes me feel so lucky to have this me I do not desire, because it means I will never be unfulfilled. And maybe that's the actual loophole here. Speaking of desires unfulfilled, my not-so-secret desire is for you to subscribe to this channel, so consider doing that if you like my content, and thank you for watching.